the original Venice City Hall. It was built in 1903. You can find more of that history online or ask us about it. But yeah, we are in a very sacred space. We are continuing to offer our free Monday night fiction workshop with Raquel Baker and our historic Wednesday night poetry workshop led by Martin Yago. Both workshops happen every week online on Zoom, and participants are invited to bring their drafts and have them workshopped with a group of participants. So if you want to know more about that, to be involved in our workshops, you can talk to me after the reading. Just a few things that we have coming up in the space. We are hosting David St. John and David L. Yulin, who will be in conversation on the works and legacy of Larry Levis. And that's happening tomorrow. And we're also celebrating the legacy of former Los Angeles poet laureate Luis J. Rodriguez. And poet Catherine Strisik will be joining us from New Mexico to read from her latest collection, Goat Goddess Moon. And this month we are having a poetry and wine tasting fundraiser out in our garden, which we like to call the Poets Garden. And winemakers from Paso Robles will be pouring wine while we listen to some poetry. We have poets like Muriel Long and our board president, Luivet Resto, who will be hosting the evening. So that is actually one way that you can support the organization. Beyond Baroque, has this beautiful space that we maintain every year. We are a 58-year-old organization now. But if you can't make it to the fundraiser, you can become a member. Memberships start at $75, and there are discounts for students as well. But you get to come to events for free, and you can also have many perks in the bookstore, such as discounts in our books as well as our merch. So there are many ways to be involved and to support the lifeline of Beyond Baroque. And we hope to see you here again in the space. Want to give a shout out to our team. We have Eric Alberg in the booth, who is doing live stream as well. Yeah. We have Genesis Perez in the bookstore. After the reading, Judy Kleinberg has several chapbooks, zines, and collections that are for sale, and all kind of revolve around the current exhibition that we have of her work. So just a reminder that the Mike Kelley Gallery, we have half of it here in the lobby, and the rest is upstairs in the actual Mike Kelley Gallery room. So you will be able to see the exhibition afterwards if you haven't gotten a chance to see it. But yeah, before, no, actually, that's it. That's all you need to know. I was going to say, before any readings begin. Oh, the fundraiser is on May 16th at 6 p.m., poetry and wine tasting fundraiser. Thank you for that. Okay, to start with some readings, the juicy questions about reality. We're about to find out. But that's a great title. And we're actually going to begin with Suzanne O'Connell, who is a poet living in Los Angeles. Before becoming a poet, she was a therapist at UCLA Student Counseling Center. Her work can be found in Poet Lore, North American Review, Drunk Monkeys, Paterson Literary Review, among others. And Suzanne was a finalist in the Steve Kowit Poetry Prize in 2024. Her two poetry collections, A Prayer for Tom Stockings and What Luck, were published by Garden Oak Press. Please give a round of applause to Suzanne O'Connell.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming on a weeknight. Great. So when Judy asked me if I would participate, I said, of course, I'd love to, thank you. And she asked if my poems had any kind of theme. And I said no. And to illustrate, I sent her the topics of the last 5 poems I had written, and I thought I would read those to you. The first one was about mayonnaise. The second one was about the Super Bowl halftime show, particularly the grass costumes, which I just fell in love with. Then there was the history of lipstick. There was one about childhood trauma, and one about an unhoused man on the government park and ride who decided he would set up a store. So that was my way of saying, no, I don't have a theme. And I tell you that because sometimes it's a little hard to ping pong around with all the different topics, but I think we'll do fine. So the first one is about a 2-time United States Poet Laureate. I won Billy Collins in a raffle. Billy Collins has 6 rules for poems. I should know, I won him in a raffle. A worthy charity, 12 sessions of consultation and editing. I was too shy to talk in our first meeting, but he had read what I emailed. You're too earnest, and I don't mean that in a good way, he said. I learned he's a straight shooter, gruff, but with humor. Make the reader want to continue reading, he said. But if he told me how to accomplish this, the pith has slipped my mind. Make your poem look lovely on the page. I pictured a fussy widower dusting his figurines and dusting my pages. Rule 1, never use the word grandfather. Rule 2, ditto the word cicada. Rule 3, don't be too earnest. Rule 4, keep the reader reading no matter what. Rule 5, make the poem look nice on the page. Rule 6, when at a loss for an ending, have some brown hens standing in the rain. Thank you, Billy, for your lessons, even though I had to give up my summer vacation to afford them. Picture this, some brown hens are standing in the rain. The next one is called Selling Pencils. My pretend future involved selling lead pencils door to door. Most days I lost myself in bird song, the moods of the sky, the stately sycamores. I often looked up instead of forward, tripping while watching the parrots flash green. Once I fell into someone's garden. Afterwards, my coat smelled of ruptured tomatoes and dirt. I rinsed the ash from my hands in a nearby fountain. All I wanted was to work outdoors. An office was a cage, me the rabbit, ready for the spit. There were days I didn't want to speak to another human, so I only knocked on doors where I knew the occupant wasn't there. My shoe leather suffered fiercely, repaired by cardboard, leaves, and blisters, but no mind. I received the stares of others as bouquets of compassion, whether they were intended as such or not. I often thought of myself as Moses strolling along the Ganges. I heard God's soft voice telling me to climb the mountains. Why I thought those things, I really can't say. But if the answer occurs to me, I'll use one of my pencils to jot it down. I ate something. Like tiny meatballs, the bees nestled among the bitter greens and cheese. I didn't see them when I ate the pizza. Soon my throat began buzzing. My stomach was tickled by a hurricane of fluttering wings. A lot of the bees escaped my mouth, hovering in a cloud over my hair. They grabbed words I was thinking in their sticky legs, random words like taffeta, prawns, boneyard, and flew out the window. They flew, carrying their heavy loads, past Ophelia's house with the new paving stones, past Christine's house, now becoming apartments. They flew past the family living in the RV, past the pot dispensary and the potholes. Love is like that, right? The fluttering in the stomach, the drunken buzzing in the head. It looks delicious at first, so easy to gorge without looking too closely. Then it flies away into the soiled sky, covered with bandages in place of clouds. Something with wheels. I remembered her after seeing the black and white photograph of the empty parking lot at night. A shopping cart sat in the foreground, tall floodlights dizzy in the fog. At 22, she came to therapy with childhood trauma. When she was 7, her mother drove to Lucky's Supermarket on Wilshire and Franklin, told her to get out, and drove away. My client never saw her mother again. A therapist is supposed to be non-judgmental, to help the client express her pain, but to compassionately imagine what the mother must have been dealing with. What I actually wanted to do was track the mother down, put her in that empty shopping cart, and push her over the Palisades into the ocean. People riding the Ferris wheel would later comment that they saw something with wheels fly off the cliff. Here's one of the ones I told Judy about. God visits the park and ride. God's mighty foot soldier, pilot without a ship, scholar with no words, he becomes the early morning. God's nameless stem, owning no tools but a piece of cardboard, clearing a portion of the city's park and ride, piling rocks and dirt at the edges. God's loose feather, devout with determination, brother of the dirt, he plants markers on his work. A tiny American flag, a balloon depicting Earth. Nice work you're doing, I say. His eyes shift left to right, no answer. What's your plan, I ask. Cell phone store, he says. Oh, God of mercy, let this wild orchid and his dust be blessed. This is called I'm Certain of This after Lucille Clifton. This is what I know. My mother went mad long before my father's house. Maybe it was the letter my grandfather wrote, "Will you marry me and be my best girl?" It gave me the icks. She never spoke of him. This is what I know. She thought she'd be a star. Her shiny page boy, beautiful legs, winning smile. A perfect combination, but no agent knocked on the door, no script, no audition. This is what I know. Some women's days are spooned out in the kitchen of their lives. Hers was sipped from a chilled glass after she served us chicken knuckles with gravy, adding resentment to every bite. This is what I learned. The word asylum can mean two things: the offer of protection to a helpless refugee or an institution for the mentally ill. A home can be either one or both. Fire in the snow. We were freckled angels. One moment. Fire in the snow. We were freckled angels, tender mushrooms pushing up in spring, our canvases ready to be painted upon, brains ready to be altered by images in magazines and newspapers of cherries dangled by their stems before an open woman's mouth, a mouth covered with red lipstick. Like drugs, there was a progression, and Tangy was our gateway lipstick. Named after plump, fragrant tangerines, it was a waxy substance in a grown-up tube, painting our mouths a modest pink. Ads called Tangy slightly shy, almost undetectable from strict parental gaze. Next was Revlon's Cherries in the Snow, a pink-red color in a sophisticated tube, described in their ads as warm and reckless, ready for experimentation. Worn by Sylvia Plath in real life and mentioned in the bell jar as Christmas roses. If a girl answered the teen magazine questionnaire correctly with questions like, "Do you dance with your shoes off?" you were allowed to progress to Fire and Ice, described as a red for the apocalypse. Their ad said, "Wear tonight, anything can happen." As I write this, I wear only lip balm that protects me from cold sores and sunburn, practical and colorless, in a yellow plastic tube. I'm thinking of taxes, the clogged drain in the bathroom sink, and war. Like Boris Karloff's face. How scary you are today, Los Angeles. Like Boris Karloff's face. Like a lost key. Like a sore that won't heal. The shortcut ahead is shadowy like Hansel and Gretel, and my dog and I are about to enter, where monsters can hide in the bushes as we step over needles and broken glass and gang graffiti on the metal fence. A shadow proceeds towards us, maybe a lost shadow, like Peter Pan's, that needs stitching onto the heels of the man or creature about to turn the corner. Or maybe it's a killer on the loose, as my Citizen app constantly warns. People who are armed with knives, a machete, guns, and once with hot soup. They could harm me in a blink, but the person turning the corner is a young man with curly black hair singing a song to himself. He says, "Hey," in passing. Which reminds me that sometimes a shadow is just a shadow, like when you and I are walking the dog and our three shadows stretch basketball player size. So funny to see on the sidewalk like that in this crazy funhouse of a city. This one is dedicated to Judy because it has a mention of Red Cross assignments in it. I smelled you today. That part's not for Judy. I smelled you today as your truck stopped at the sign to let Marcel and I cross. Your passenger window was down. Your truck, once green, now rusting, idled, and your morning soap breezed over. I was trying to avoid the ugly around me. Someone turned over the trash receptacle again. Food, papers, and dog poop bags covered the sidewalk and street. Thinking of soap, I remembered disaster assignments where the team, housed in a cheap hotel, had white paper squares of soap. When opened, dry chips fell out. The next morning, the whole team smelled of the same soap. As a child, I loved Lifebuoy. I think the bars were orange. My Uncle Jim used it after his job laying linoleum. As a teenager, I ordered hard-milled French soap with fancy names, trying to be sophisticated. I could never get that expensive stuff to lather. There were also hippie soaps of musk and patchouli that made my skin break out. Maybe when I'm taking my last breath, memories of soap will summarize my life. If so, I hope I don't forget the brief intimacy today with a truck driver fresh from his shower. Explaining LA to someone from out of town. Some areas howl more than others. Downtown is like a carnival, the Ferris wheel overgrown with old yellow ivy. A shop selling quinceañera gowns sits next to a trendy bistro with outdoor seating. Men with metal carts sell papayas, tulips, and pineapple. On another corner, a woman prepares tamales. The aroma of roasting pork draws me in. Young folk wearing black layers glide and mingle in the fashion district. The naked eye might see discarded signs from a protest march through Pershing Square. Think of it this way. LA's a glowing body, edges blurred, filled with speed bumps, the light coming from people of every color, age, religion. It's Tuesday, and I am one minuscule pixel of its light. An abundance of condiments. What I need tonight is some mayonnaise. Not the homemade French kind, the thick, off-white aioli with a touch of marjoram, but a big blob of tangy American stuff straight from the jar to dip, to coat, or for a sandwich. Mayonnaise has never sworn at me, attacked me, commented on my body, or had unfair expectations. Mayonnaise is there to serve. It almost salutes as it spreads over my turkey sandwich on 7-grain bread. It's the glue, the bandage, the slick heart song of my life. I'm learning to appreciate the small things because the big things are out of reach. I'm watching TV news over lunch as citizens are murdered, the Constitution shredded, while I sit here dipping my fried fish fillet in spicy mayonnaise. The difference between falling and flying. I never kissed Carl, but he shared his sandwich with me once. I was 11, he was a man of 15. I never took off my clothes for Carl, but I thought I would, under his grape arbor, dripping with sugar. Carl never touched me except when he dragged me up the stairs to his pigeon coop. I heard them flutter and coo, Carl's homing pigeons, trained to fly home. They wore silver bracelets on their scaly ankles. Carl never hurt me, but on the roof his eyes got funny when he said my name. He said I did things to his body. Carl leaned close and told me what he did to his sister. I stopped thinking about taking my clothes off and thought instead of cages and being lost. I still remember the taste of those purple grapes and his name, Carl. Carl with a K. This is a love poem for my sweetheart who's here, and it's called What Luck. Somebody ran out on somebody. Somebody drank too much. Over there, an unkind word. In that kitchen, a knife drawer opens, or a bruise blooms on a neck. At the shore, a freak wave is forming. But tonight, in the blue TV glow, our dog lies between us. The fire that could have started in the old wires didn't. The errant cells didn't color outside their lines. Tonight, that peculiar wave didn't crest in our direction. Tonight, my toes touch your toes as we watch cars crash together on the 9 o'clock news. And I'm going to close with the title of my book, A Prayer for Torn Stockings. Bless the torn stockings and the sinking ship. Bless the nights of sin and the hard of hearing who miss a lot. Bless the left-handed ones because they can be somewhat peculiar. Bless the bloated and the forgotten on the dirt road. Bless the film star and the digger of the ditch. Bless, too, the wandering rabbit, wandering in the blurred eye of night, and may our little friend be cloaked by darkness. Bless the table spread with abundance, and also bless the potato in a child's pocket. Bless the inventor of the zipper, and bless the warm bread stuffed with nuts and plums for the sweetness upon our tongue. Blessings on this night, blessings stitched as fine as lace underthings, strewn over the trees. Blessings on all of us as we stand here in our torn stockings. Thank you.
Yeah, let's give it up one more time for Suzanne O'Connell. Thank you. That was all wonderful. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Liz Stevens. She teaches memoir with the UCLA Extension Writers Program, as well as 4 private workshop groups. And if you're interested, you can inquire via Instagram. She's a writing coach and story editor for memoir manuscripts with a memoir, The Days Are God's, on University of Nebraska Press, and anthologized essays in many series, among them in the short series Which Changed Her Life's Path, edited by the late Judith Kitchen. She has served as managing editor of Brevity and won and been a finalist for a bunch of awards. none more dear to her than the Annie Dillard Award for Creative Nonfiction. She lives and writes also from a cabin in the Mojave Desert that's currently for sale if you're a very quiet and clean neighbor. Please welcome Liz Stevens.
Oh, this is great. It is absolutely perfect. Suzanne, that work was so beautiful, and it's wonderful that it was about LA. My first piece is going to be about neighborhoods in some way. But I wanted to start, Judy, thank you for bringing us together. And there is a piece upstairs of Judy's that ends up serving as the perfect epigraph for this first piece. So I'm going to start with a piece of hers. You learn the love of places, the quality of speculative beauty in the empty lot, the house so full of waiting. So I'm going to start on that. And I have two pieces, I think work according to our time, of both that kind of look in a very different way at this juicy questions that Judy put to us. So, all right, the first piece, which you'll see the irony of, that we have the epigraph for there. I now have a different cabin in the Mojave, no husband, a new neighborhood here again, and my father that I write about has passed. So much has changed, which is actually one of the points of the piece, as you will see. All right. You've got a tick in your eye. My cousin, 5 years older than me, infinitely cooler than me, in cut-off jean shorts and vinegary sun-in blonde hair, says this with only slight alarm as she leans down to peer at me under a rusty swing set somewhere at the end of an Oklahoma dirt road that no longer exists. See, she says to her sister, just as wonderful, leggy and ethereal in blue eyeliner and shiny toenails, a red plastic cup of sweet tea in her hand, held as languidly as that cousin does everything. I have never been languid a day in my sweaty 8-year-old life. Languid is not a word that has been used to describe me. I am marched down the dirt lane to sit next to the mid-century pool at my aunt's low-slung ranch house, the only smudge of glamour in a neighborhood of open fields, unruly honeysuckle, and fighting rooster coops. My aunt went to art school in Kansas. She's always going to be different in just the right way. My back is close enough to her Lincoln Continental to feel the heat off the metal as I face the pool and everybody stares in a circle at the tick in my eye. It is a glorious, humid, dusty, hay-scented, exotic Oklahoma summer day. Nothing my parents ever offered once they moved north to a wealthy suburban Wisconsin town held anything like the heady intimacy of being part of the community of that county in Oklahoma. Slow waves on back roads, neighbors lining the driveway to help put in your cattle guard, trucks pulling over to chew the gossip until it's used right up next to intersections, were way better to my mind than the sailboats and tall fences we moved to. Everything in the new place about otherness and getting away from and having or not having. There's a difference between everybody knows your business and accountability for your public actions. Accountability gets you a serious conversation in a kitchen somewhere, but everybody knowing your business only gets you a side eye and a snicker at the arcade. I found out both the long way. I've been searching to find that net again, the invasive and advice-doling citizen body, my whole life. I've tried a lot of neighborhoods. My dad was the local Episcopalian priest in that wealthy Wisconsin town, and our family occupied a genteel, poor church mouse status as a succor to the elite rich white folks who populated the parish. Episcopalians, if I allow myself a broad generalization, seem to come in two stripes. Hippie community organizers who make unleavened wheat bread for communion, and rich white people who seriously like ceremony, tradition, and wine. We would have tended to be in the first crowd, but this town had the rich white version. We were not rich, and in retrospect, not terribly white. Our mixed Native American, Oklahoma, the native state, say the license plates. That blood made us a little muddy, just the tiniest bit more olive, with cheekbones that didn't make sense in a sea of Germanic ruddiness. We had a kidney-shaped a kidney bean-shaped pool on the church's dime at the clergy house, and our backyard's chain-link fence divided us from the local high school principal's house. So I managed a convenient crush on the principal's son for a bit, but couldn't maintain it in the face of his absolutely regular boringness. Across the small street next to us was a sprawling and deep cemetery full of hills and mausoleums, and it's a mark of the town that that place was about the best thing going on at the time, park-wise. I found a deer leg bone there once and was able to convince myself it was probably a human leg bone by proximate causes, until at least college, when I faced the fact that this had been wishful thinking. I remember nothing else about the people in the neighborhood. Nothing. We lived there 10 years, and the whole time felt transient. Even so, that was some solid middle-class life. My parents' relationship to their neighborhoods is still a mystery to me. I think when I ask them, it's going to tell me a lot about them, and perhaps that's why I haven't asked, afraid of the Rorschach-like accuracy about their lives in the decades when each liked or hated a job, their relationship to and expectations of each other, their relationship to and expectations of the world at large. The answer will be the larger circle of the Venn diagram of what I knew of them at home, navigating us. Long before Wisconsin, it hadn't always been that way. Excuse me. In a small Pennsylvania army town, my mother remembers my oldest brother choking as an infant and her running flat out the front door of the house, straight down the middle of the street toward the Army base hospital. Her neighbors peeling out in cars to try and catch her and put her in the car and drive her there faster. Mostly, my own adult neighborhoods feel like they are chasing me. Old identities I can't squelch, more unburnable than journals. Each holds proof of how well or badly I've behaved. Neighborhoods hold such promise, and in my experience at least, later such crushing weight. The weight of the memories, hopes played out, time squandered, inadequacies revealed, ignored, or faced. Any crucible that held all of these is doomed to provoke such intensity in me I might mistake it for hate, but that would be a mistake. Shocked by the gaps I have in my childhood, the sheer absence of credit for time spent, I've tried as an adult to be committed deeply to knowing the places I live. And while I would like to imagine that knowing a place means learning the wildlife and the plants in the area, I know now that knowing involves the humans. What a surprise. I lived for a long time everywhere at a remove. As the young girl, the white girl, the grad student, the liberal, me using any identifier that would get me a pass out of becoming engaged with whatever the dominant feel at work on the block was. It got in my way, and it won me absolutely nothing. It stunted my growth, and I spent my 30s catching up on all of the emotional lessons and showing up I had dodged before. So my neighborhoods have become a parish of sorts of people I'm handed without choice to navigate a relationship with. Notice, however, that neighborhoods is plural, though, even now, the mark of a grown-up who has never quite found a particular job or way of life that stuck. Presently, I have 1.5 neighborhoods. Neither is very nice. I don't have the big square Midwestern ivy and clapboard home I imagined I would by now, and I guess now I never will. I still feel a punch of yearning, some moonlit nights and some hazy mornings, walking by houses with deep side yards and swing sets, porch chairs and front halls. But I'm always surprised that I haven't squelched that longing when it rears its atavistic head, because it's evident even to me that I have not pursued the life that ever would have led to that end. My Los Angeles neighborhood is, in an accurate way, the culmination of my adult life. All the major races are represented, all ages, and in fact, all economic statuses, because at the end of our tidy cul-de-sac are the 5 houses that climb the mountain foothill to look down at those of us on the flats. We all know every car, and every car has its regular de facto parking spot, and if a guest should throw that off for more than a few hours, God forbid, a new car and a new spot is an actual conversation here. In the regular passing of a day, I walk the Vietnam vet's Chihuahua with my own dog. Mike, the vet of the Iraqi war, knocks and gives me fish he caught in Mexico and asks for avocados off my tree, and I say, take them all and also take the Meyer lemons because I will never do this fish justice. The mother and the son next door stop me to tell me I look good after my new workout plan and haircut, and I say the same to them because one of them just took up boxing and the other got a haircut, and I'm too shy by a mile to just say thank you. Also, the mother's mother hands me grapes off of their vines while the mother's father zealously guards the yard cat that's only going to come to him anyway. Mary, down the way, washes her car religiously, perhaps for church, the only place she ever seems to go, and then quickly covers it up again with the tarp. She will give us a note at Christmas that will be addressed in elemental and evocative English to the good family. The husband of the woman who is as mean as a snake to everyone dies at their home across the street, and 2 mornings later, the keening of the daughter hits the dawn sky. The baby of the psychologist and her professor husband grows seemingly on every walk until I wait for it to spring from the bassinet of its own violation, an Alice in Wonderland nightmare. The unsmiling man who lives kitty corner to us leaps to help my husband work on a truck, stomping the gas pedal unsmilingly as my husband turns things in the engine. It's like with my father, he says, and I'm never quite sure if he means the process or perhaps the truck itself, full of grit, truculence, and mysterious quirks. A half a neighborhood can only happen because you are there part-time, not because you only get half of it. Neighborhoods only come in whole portions. My other neighborhood is as undeniable and inconvenient ways, my heart, my bête noire, the thing I wish I didn't love. To describe it is to see my id. It's new to me, as in all new love affairs, I give it whatever it wants. In that neighborhood, I have a too small cabin in the desert, on land no one wants, and thus was very cheap. In fact, no one wanted that land before 1954, not even the native population, and then no one wanted it since 1954, when the government tried to give the land away, and one new Italian immigrant thought it was worth at least the price of the cinder block cabin he put there, but nobody's thought so since. When I drove up to the cabin, it was with something I would call unsurprise that I realized I couldn't even get off the dirt road to park. The house had been plowed in, years of grading the dirt road, throwing a berm of red sandy desert into a trench in front of the ignored place. No matter, I knew how to play hard to get. The low gray cinder block cabin crouched there in the blazing sun. It looked like if you touched it, the walls would still be cool, a rebellion. Even made of brick, the house had a kind of transparency, turned in on itself, but with windows lined up front and back, the desert, the view from front to back. I stood there until dark and listened to the dogs and coyotes howl at the twilight wind as the heat bowed out and the uninhabitable parts of the desert reasserted itself. The next day I drove back. At the newest house in the area, 20 acres from the cabin, a 30-something man brings water to his goats in a pen. Nearby, the oldest man I've ever seen picks something nearly imaginary, it is so small, off the dirt of his yard next to the dirt that is the road. An alarmingly fit 70-year-old woman hoofs it down the road with a Walkman on. A heavy-set girl of about 20 wrings out a towel heavy with water into a bucket in her driveway, 15 acres from the cabin in the other direction. Have I mentioned none of these cabins have piped water or power? How inconvenient they are? How very like me in spatial space and utility and charm. Every one of the people waves except the girl, and she's my closest neighbor. But I figure I'll be back for her later. I'll get her. Every one of the people I saw is a perfect specimen of desert types, including me, city transient, overeducated, wound up on desert dream, and so the fabric of the neighborhood feels complete. I wonder what I'll learn about them, one driveway snippet at a time over years. I wonder what they'll learn about me by knocking on my door when I don't want them or catching me on a low-resistance day. I wonder what I'll learn about myself, listening to that wind so meaningless it's existential, staring at the long view, interrupted only and pointedly by the houses of other people who also came here to be alone, when none of us are, and in fact what we are honing is really only the power to pretend we ever could be, and then we go and we tell each other about it. Thank you. Okay, that's one, and looking at my timing, okay, here we go. All right, I'm going to read just a quick kind of edited version of this one, a excerpted bit. All right. It's from a piece called American Animal. Excuse me. All right. The orientation at the Animal Rescue Center did not prepare me for these things. Judy, different Judy, holds, unless you'd like to cop to this in a moment, holds her hands around a possum's mouth and, lowering her head, starts giving it mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. We all stand completely still, listening to her breath, staring at the delicate feet of the animal, like a ballet dancer in a children's book, pointed toward us. The small pads of the possum's feet, as he goes into shock and dies, fade from a lovely pink into a fleshy, splotchy peach, and then finally into white. Judy sits back. Shit, she sighs. Will you get me a trash bag? And then there is a green heron in the shower stall of the medical center staff bathroom that is the only place in our facility tall enough to hold him. I must wear safety goggles and leather gloves just to hand him dead fish. His snapping bill makes the dream swords were made from whip-thin and vicious. There's a loon with a flat feather coat of supple, shiny spots like the emperor's imaginary cape. A bird that has a call so mournful I can hardly keep walking while she makes it. They hate me. I'm soothed cleaning up their crap, making the slush of lettuce in a blender to put their fish in. But they beat the back of the containing cages with their wings at half-mast when I open the doors. I picture the burst of empty air left in hands when they are released, and that makes it marginally better, having to terrify them now. Also, it was not mentioned at the orientation that though we use frozen secondhand lab mice to feed the hawks, we don't want the wild mice that appear in the kitchen, but we will rescue mice brought into us. A dead baby squirrel may lay tenderly wrapped in a dish towel on the counter. Don't put your hand there, but we will feed it to the owls. I will think a lot there about the surprise of meeting what's normally roadkill up close. I will begin to stare at roadkill. I will think of that when I see the vet tech Lisa hold a bird on its back, talons up, and say, "Well, count to 3, buddy," as she shoots a needle into its chest full of antibiotics and hope. I was surprised during the orientation when I went out to lunch with a dozen other trainees to hear them spend the time telling horror stories, botched attempts to save roadkill, abused pets, work stories. They were all vet students and interning zoologists. I sat at the table with my increasingly unappetizing salads, my emotion, my book reading on wildlife, and my gut reactions. They were dispassionate in many ways, 20 years old and already inured to trauma. They knew, and perhaps it was a consequence of that, how to handle the animals. Adrenaline buzzing through my hands, I could fumble the meekest squirrel, and did. When I realized one rainy day that the vet tech had handed me a squirrel she just euthanized in the moments before it died, I set it into a shoebox and I shook, mourning it, petting it as it faded. Dog kennels full of damaged geese were shoved into my legs from behind me, the quotidian carnage stacking up while I stood in the way. The vet tech, the students, the lowest interns could tell me how many squirrels were overrunning the yards of homeowners every spring. From 20 feet away, I didn't even like squirrels, but in my own hands, I could feel its heart. Even outside the city where I worked then, every curve of those roads revealed a nest of trailers, disused trampolines, chickens penned in chicken-wired cattle feeders, scraping at the less than wild dust under their feet. It was rural outside town, but none of it was wild. At least I didn't feel wildness there, not in myself, not on the land, not surely in the thin shade of ratty second-growth forest surrounding fallow, battered fields. But I like to imagine that at night in the city, or in the rushing energy of spring, behind our feet, where our footsteps are dissipating like heat, the animals can creep back, coursing through sewer tunnels, under bridges, the edges of parking lots. I imagine it like a film in reverse, a fairy tale of adaptability. The insects first, and then the mice, and then the squirrels, and then the skunks, possums, deer, coyotes, wolf, bear. Thank you.
Yeah, let's keep it going for Liz Stevens. Thank you. Thank you to our guest features. And without further ado, we are going to welcome Judy Kleinberg, but it's been great working with you, Judy. The exhibition is amazing, and it was just in time for National Poetry Month. So what a great way to celebrate with you. And looking forward to this ekphrastic reading that we're going to experience. In the unrelenting battle against doggerel and sloth, Judy Kleinberg tears words out of magazines and magics them into poems. Her work has been published in print and online journals and anthologies worldwide and can be viewed in the Mike Kelley Gallery up to May 9th, 2026. So you have to this Saturday to see the exhibition. And that's mostly for the folks joining us online. Her recent collections of visual poems include How to Pronounce the Wind, Desire's Authority, and She Needs the River. All of We is forthcoming from Aninga Press. A Los Angeles native and a longtime resident of Bellingham, Washington, she posts frequently at chocolateIsaverb.wordpress.com and on Instagram at J.I. Kleinberg. Please welcome Judy Kleinberg.
Thank you. Yes, there it is. Okay, so maybe if I turn this right side up, I will do better. So I really just want to thank you for being here, and thank you so much to Suzanne and Liz, who just took a chance and said yes and joined us here this evening, and for sharing their wonderful words. I really want to thank everybody at Beyond Baroque. I have worked with a lot of groups of people in my life, and I have to say that this is an extraordinary group of people. Everybody is so nice, and it's so helpful, and I've asked for many things. If you know me at all, you know I'm very detail-oriented, and nobody has said, why are you asking us that? Everybody's just said, sure, we can do that, which has been so wonderful. And I want to really thank you for being here, and for those of you who are online, thanks for listening. And I know that there are some people here this evening who have not been to a poetry reading before, and congratulations. I hope you're not too traumatized by this experience. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about my found poetry, which is what's in the exhibit, and I'm going to read some of those to you, and then I'm also going to read you some regular poems, and I'm going to go back and forth a bit between the two. And I'm going to start with the poem that gave the show its name, the poem My Trembling Candle, which is what you see behind me. I'm going to see if I can work this out. Hang on a second here. If I can see what I'm doing. Let's see. And there is the poem. The poem, Discovered in the Shadow, Death, a New Language, Dark and Avid, the poem My Trembling Candle. So the way this works is I go to the public library where they have bins in the basement where people leave their used magazines. And I take those magazines and I look through them. And this started originally because I was doing collage with lots of color and texture. And I was looking through magazines for places for beautiful colors. And I noticed that words were stacking up on the page in ways that were unintended. And that amused me. And so I started collecting those words. Here's one. This is in the show. It's right out here in the wall. Architect of the sky, the wind invites the light. So what you see on the right here is an ad for a Hyundai Sonata. And I can't tell you why it is that I see that on the page, but what I saw was the wind invites the light. And you can see, maybe you can see that the wind was part of a hyphenated word and light was plural, and I will make those little changes to it, but I outlined it here. I don't normally do any outlining, but I tear the words carefully out of the page, and I save those, and they roam around on my table and look for other words that they like. Here's another poem. The river elegiac, the current no more than water added to water, exuberance machine, blurred, impelling, atavistic. So what I saw here in an old copy of American Heritage magazine was these words, the current no more than water added to water. And this was an article on some unrelated subject, Andrew Jackson. I'm not sure what the subject was, but you can maybe see here that I'm not only reading across the lines, but I'm also jumping across the column break. And so in this particular poem, you can see there's a column break in that segment, the current no more than water added to water. There's also one in the lower blurred, impelling, atavistic. So those words were taken out of different columns and maybe even different paragraphs. That's how this works. I have lots and lots of little pieces of language floating around in my studio. So I'm going to read you some of these. I'm going to start with some of the poems that are in the case, the framed ones. They're a little difficult to see in the case. And you'll notice that a lot of these are about birds. I do have a lot of bird poems. A fine night in the lush grass, and from my shadow, the air was pouring dawn birds. And as I'm cutting these pieces out, I'm thinking of each of these individual torn fragments as a line of poetry, to be read as a line of poetry. And how the crows screech, charcoal letter forms, hand stitching the sky. As arbiters of the light, hummingbirds enabled sugar, sweetest sunshine, small effulgence. Below that totem nest, I still repair, swallow green ember in the air. Every once in a while, I rhyme. Cornflower morning, vegetable days, words for praising the exact summer, even the immaculate sun tap dancing with cardinals. Form the moon, shimmering and round, ample shadows, chiaroscuro stain, fine, fine bird. Heart into feathers, plucked from love, and of the plumage of the flight, in dappled shimmer, 100 wings. Living rocks bite into flowers, prairie-hipped mountains wander in the luminosity of meadows. So I'm going to turn a corner here and read you 2 poems. This is, I'm also going to do some LA poems here. As many of you know, I live in Bellingham, but I grew up here. This is a true bit of history about an area on the UCLA campus, and it incorporates some text from the wonderful site waterandpower.org that has amazing photographs of old Los Angeles. And The poem is called Arroyo, and it opens with this brief description. And the poem incorporates another description from Water and Power. The bridge, 285 feet long and 75 feet wide, stood 2 stories deep at its end and 3 at its center. Big bridge. Arroyo. The bridge is gone, not blown up or torn down, buried. It wasn't old or falling apart. It crossed an arroyo that could be filled up to make more land. So the bridge was shoveled under and paved over. The double course of blind arches, the Romanesque rosette and diamond patterns, the carved limestone and decorative parapets, buried whole. The scar smoothed with walkways and grass, there but not there. The bridge haunts me, shoveled under, paved over, there but not there. And this is also an growing up in LA poem. And it makes reference to Lana Turner. And for those of you who don't know, Lana Turner was famously discovered at age 15 at a soda fountain in Hollywood. Discovered. From the Pacific Ocean, the land sprawled eastward, wide and flat, crossed by arroyos, gouged by twice-a-century rainstorms, dust-coated gullies of weedy scrub that sheltered small brown lizards. The hills heaved from that unpromising plain, oily green, sage-scented, scarred by fickle seasons that promised relief and delivered none. Filled with post-war possibility, our family settled there, bewitched by the sky and the thundering shore, by perfumed orange groves felled as neighborhoods replaced acres of parched soil with carpets of manicured lawns. Just once it snowed, and occasionally the ground ruptured as we clung uselessly to door frames, the doors bruising our hips in their undulant dance. We tipped back in our observatory seats to face the star-struck sky and saw how astronomers pictured space travel in the little souvenir books we brought home. We wrote letters to pen pals in places we had not yet invaded and pretended the ever-present shushing rumble of cars was really the sea. And even when seashells and pelicans vanished from the water's edge, we never blamed our hunger, never recognized our eagerness to erase the landscape's flaws and our own, our fervent wish to be made perfect, to be discovered, to be Lana Turner at the soda fountain of desire. Okay, I'm going to show you some more found poems. Now, a time for dreams and books. Also, travel on the couch, flying in place, words, hummingbirds. That is a COVID poem. The big birds gathering, the emerald shrill and glossy bright, and teal for all to see, missionaries of the resplendent. Spring lights sweet, susceptible to finches, and co-founder of the flowers. The excellent dawn, the breeze breathing, boisterous air fragrant, the grass already noisy, how light is capable of birds. The land ambles toward evening, the mountain consumed the sun. We were the land, ate little, wore wilderness, and sipped at the rising moon. The mountain bled burgundy parasols, lipstick and lavender, cerise evening, every stone crease, neon blue shadow. To be not simply the machine, but a wave of awe. The hummingbird and the apple, the same green fire. We have to gravitate from behind reality, just poets found with the hummingbird at the wedding of the Sphinx. And this is my work table. There's a lot going on there, and I find words often that will wander around on the table and they just can't find anybody else to talk to. So I have many recurring topics, and that's what those little drawers are. And they end up going into those little drawers, and I go back to them, and I will discover that I'm writing a poem and I just have to have a moon, and by golly, I have a little drawer that says moon on it, and I open it up and I can find that little collection of words. So I'm going to go and read you a few more poems. This is another LA poem, and this refers to skippers. And skippers are those little buffy-colored butterflies. There were always skippers on the ice plant, a half-inch long, the color of butterscotch, and not very fast. We could pinch their wings between thumb and index finger and like to feel the fluttering against our palms as we held them in our cupped hands. Later, we smeared their golden dust on our cheeks. We never thought they might be important. They were like moths, a lower order of things, not like real butterflies, or even dragonflies, which we rarely saw, or fireflies, which probably didn't really exist. There were lizards, too, small and brown and fast, and when we tried to catch them, we sometimes ended up with just a tail between our fingers, and sometimes saw one missing a tail and tried to examine that place that was wounded but not bloodied, and wondered if we could do that too, leave behind some part that would grow back, not yet understanding the scraped wings of the heart or the oozing scars of love. For the last time, in my answers and my silence, my touch and my absence, my lapses and excuses, I am exhausted by the defaulting litany of sorry, sorry, sorry. I sorry the earthworms and the spiders, the knee-bruised moss and pruned branches. I sorry the wren chased from the patio, the squirrel disturbed mid-theft apple in its little hands. I sorry my forgettings and repetitions, my blurted interruptions and reclusive innervations. I sorry you and you impatient me, and the arugula which has bolted, and mustn't that be my fault? Not until you tell me you're sorry, my mother would say, knowing I would. I sorry the empty mailbox, the ladybug rescued from the pile of clippings, the baby garter snake surprised by the mower, the friend whose call to me was one of his last, but my mother wouldn't give him my number. And still I sorry, sorry, sorry into the dark. I sorry the slammed door, the bird-spattered windshield, the honeybees, the glaciers, whales, oceans, the frightened, bullied, ailing, abused, betrayed, disappeared, captive. I sorry the chance I didn't take. I was not hurt, but what do I have to show for my lack of scars? I have done too little to undo what has been done, to prevent what is coming. Here's a few more found poems. We were Neruda's kitchen, where echoes disputed food and silence, every story of taste, the necessity of hunger. Hannah was a townhouse. Her kitchen was her husband. She knew a bit about chemistry, the subtle science of desire. He was her hypothesis. The kitchen was pregnant. Hannah is a recurring character. I don't know where she came from. I have remarkably few Hannahs in my life, but she just keeps showing up. The house was like jazz, low and exciting. The listening rooms, obdurately musical, curiously contrapuntal, orchestrated light. The sun costumes morning in emphatic pajamas, silky and bright yellow and overzealous pink. Break into desire, all the space awakening. It's sort of like building April, the architecture of love. Lines coalesce, catching the moon. The house is still a book of poems, the night an expanding architecture. Scratching the stone, I ask the weight of hope. It is surprising, just like art. The language will come to me, a window into my darkness, the word, a brick. I can't laugh, caught in emotion sclerosis, due to everything at the same time. And I have just a couple more poems to read to you, I think. 3. This poem uses the word mishpacha, which is a Yiddish word for family or kin. Element 109. A manila folder in my father's bottom drawer is crammed with notes and letters, copies of articles and chapters, pages ripped from magazines. Nature, science, chemistry in Britain. Mishpacha, he calls her, claiming her as kin. His mother's second cousin, Lisa Meitner. Physicist, he calls her, the word complicated and foreign in our family of lawyers and housewives. Judgment fogged by misogyny, anti-Semitism. The Nobel Committee overlooks her discoveries in nuclear fission, awards her colleague the Nobel Prize. My father is furious. He appoints himself her posthumous publicist, corresponding with authors, querying historians, copying, stapling, mailing bits of this family lore to a widening circle of mildly curious cousins. Words highlighted, names underlined, margins marked with arrows and exclamation points. In his engineer's hand, my father pencils letters, rehearses the questions he will pose on the phone, puzzles out the known pieces of the jigsaw. Many are missing. But each paragraph in print is a small acknowledgement, vindication, apology for a brilliant life lived in shadow. 3 months before my father dies. His course already clear, his work mostly done. He sends round the last triumphant clips. His grandmother's name, our cousin's name, mapped into the heart of the periodic table. Element 109, Meitnerium, honored, official, numbered, named, radioactive, unstable, brimming with secrets. Rewind. My friend, who could not unsmoke the cigarettes that killed her, pictured the world in reverse when its advance was unbearable. Couples untangling their heated limbs, unfalling from the bed, kisses slurped back into their mouths. In the fast forward toward chaos, how else to rechamber the spectacle of destruction, unfrack the stones, withdraw the slap, suck in the curse, unsay the lie. With each lift of the knife, the onion gathers itself. A tumble of cubes climb back into slices, those white crescents aligning as half moon, then papery gold globe wrapped in total eclipse, knife slipped back in its sheath, tears sliding upward, unneeded. And I'm going to close with a love poem. If this was all we had, it would be enough. 3 windows face into the garden, sills crowded with stones. We've stolen the stones from beaches, our pockets weighted, each a time capsule conveyed from afar, each a tale with its own song, its own heat, the spark of its beginning and journey. What distances they have known, lifted, crept, rolled once for a moment, flew. What epochs of creatures and catastrophes, broken and restitched, possessed of silence and noise. No longer redolent of the sea, each rock is a paragraph to decipher. You set one in my hand, and the story passes between us. Its syntax familiar, its words all new. We never tire of this conversation, a tenderness spoken hand to hand. Our communion of minerals. What happened here, we ask? One smooth, a pale wedge peaked in caramel. This one, an encircling of planetary rings crossed by a slender band of white that came late and changed everything. A rock as easy to misuse as love. I have touched a warm stone with my tongue, tasted you, salt and mineral. Some nights I watch the moon lick their cool backs, recognizing a shared desire for light. Who will notice them when we are gone? Set a stone on the sink or the nightstand, on a grave. Who will return them to the sea or wonder why this one is shaped like a bone, that one like a fish? We eat at this table by the windows and read poems aloud, the seasons announced by snow and deer, stellars, jays, spiders, wind. Bodies lined and dusty, tumbled and worn, we watch one another for breath and tremor, hold in our hands against our cheeks a cataclysm of memories, a deepening sediment of unexpected joy.
Yeah, let's keep it going for our 3 poets this evening. Thank you so much, Judy. All gratitude to you. All gratitude to you as well, Liz and Suzanne. We have a reception out in the lobby. We have copies of the authors' books for sale, and the artwork is still on display. But yeah, so many thoughts, so much to take in. Admire the process, and thank you for showing us how you go about it. But this was a great reading, a great night. So thank you all for being here. And yeah, this is Beyond Baroque. So enjoy your night. Thank you.